podcast. I'm your host, Mari Riesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Amy Eaton. She is a product and brand photographer turned educator, teaching makers, artists, and creative entrepreneurs how to take gorgeous photos for their business. Please enjoy Amy Eaton. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. Today, I am here with Amy Eaton. She is a product and brand photographer turned educator. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Such a pleasure to be here.
I'm super excited to chat with you, having read some pieces about your own creative journey and where you are now. Can't wait to chat about that. But before we get there, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, I would love to. Okay, so I primarily was a photographer for about 8 years when I shifted my business to teaching online. So I started teaching photography, specifically product photography, to the maker community. So artists, Etsy sellers, people with their own online shops, so things that they made. And I created a series of courses for that community, which exploded and has been the greatest gift I could have ever imagined for my life. Really, it's been amazing. And really that it encompasses what I do now. My husband and I are working on a new business right now that is going to also involve the creative community. We have a lot of details coming up on that, but the kind of the basic getting started elevator pitch for our up and coming business that will be launching soon is it's an online learning community and marketplace for creatives. So we are creating a community where it will be very easy for creatives to create and host their own online workshops, courses, classes, and really get paid what we feel like is a deserving amount of money for that. Because I do believe that there are other programs out there that do similar things, but we'll do it in more of a community-based approach with a better cut going towards the creatives, basically. So that's yeah. And this is hopefully going to be coming up next year, but we've already kind of started the ball rolling with getting some course creators on board, and we're really, really excited. So so what I said first is what I have been for a few years and what I am still and will continue to be. And then there's kind of this new iteration coming up of the business as well.
Nice. I love all of it. And so important to have platforms that creative people have the opportunity to share what they do and get paid a living wage for it. And
yeah, I mean, weird, right? Like, why on earth would they think they deserve that? But no, we're really big advocates for, creative careers being really sustainable and profitable. Unlike this whole starving artist moniker, we're kind of getting rid of the concept of being a starving artist and looking at ways that we can better support the creative community. And really what I would love is just for more people to do what I did. I was a struggling photographer for so many years and I really transformed it into something that was really successful. I don't think people need to completely shift into online courses the way I did, but and that is exactly why we're creating what we're creating. So people can still have the benefit of having an online course without having to take on so much of like figuring out the tech stuff and the system stuff and all those pieces that could be, just barriers that people are just like, forget it. Just not
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think that is so important to take those barriers away so that people can share their amazing skill and talent and ideas with other people who absolutely want it, but it's hard to find sometimes.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And we're really, really thrilled about it. And I'm really excited about the community aspect of it because I just really love kind of the gathering of creatives. That's why I think why everybody loves going to like craft shows, and why people love to, participate, go to like art shows and different things like that, is they just being surrounded by that feeling of so many inspiring and creative people. And so we really want to bring that community piece in, because we feel like that's maybe something else missing from the online course world, is that it seems very individual. Like, and there's, if somebody is, say, a student on like Skillshare, they're not, hey, yeah, I'm a Skillshare student, woohoo, and feeling that kind of camaraderie and connection with other Skillshare students, like that doesn't exist really. It's not that there's, so we're really looking forward to providing kind of a more, just, I imagine in my mind a building where you could just walk in and it's really fancy, and it's not fancy as in like elegant, but really creative and cool, and you just want to hang out on like the big couches and talk to other creatives. So we're creating that in the online world.
I love it. I mean, it so speaks to stuff that I do and how important having what I call your creativity ensemble is, that other people doing similar things, and how creativity really comes alive in those spaces. And that is what I'm hearing, and I love it. So
yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. Wasn't necessarily prepared to talk about that. I just realized, like, I hadn't thought about, hey, this is a great time to talk about it. But I'm glad that I shared it. Thank you for giving me the space to do that, because we've been working on it a lot today. So it's on my mind. Yeah. And we're very excited about it. Yeah.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, why don't we dive into more creativity conversations, and what does it mean to you to be creative?
I really think that creativity exists in pretty much everything that we do. Don't you? I really feel like, I mean, everything from picking out your clothes in the morning to putting your breakfast together to, whatever you're doing at work, or when you're with your kids and what you're doing. And there's just, it's so much in every single piece of the day. And so, especially if you pay attention to it. I mean, a lot of times we kind of just go through the motions and whatever.
Right.
And we don't necessarily tune into the creative aspect of kind of just our daily lives, but it's just something that we're doing all day, every day, I think, without even really noticing it. If that makes sense.
It totally does.
Yeah. So for me, it is really about really embracing that, I think, and acknowledging it, and taking the opportunity to feel creative, even in mundane tasks.
Yes. Oh my God.
And as a photographer, that's kind of one of my own personal challenges, and kind of always has been, is creating a photo of something that is really just not that interesting, but making it look really beautiful and cool.
Yeah. So speaking of those challenges, how do you kind of face those creative challenges when you have to take a object or something that isn't all that exciting and turn it into something that people think is very exciting or attention grabbing?
And I think so. I don't know if this is everybody in the creative world, but it's definitely me. And what I find is my biggest challenge when it comes to being creative is, and always has been, just getting out of my own head. Like, I'm just constantly. And I think it comes from my days as being, a portrait photographer or a commercial photographer or whatever I was doing at the time, working for clients and thinking like, are they going to like this? Is this meeting their needs? Is this what they said that they wanted? And a lot of times those jobs come with very specific things, like people saying, don't get the right side of my face. I don't like the right side of my face, or make sure that you don't get this in the background of that shot of, this space or whatever. And so it's that over analyzing that I have kind of built into my creative process that I need to really work hard to shut down, because there's nothing that kills creativity and vision faster than, overanalyzing
our own minds.
Yeah, exactly. The creativity does not come from there most of the time. It comes from this weird otherworldly place that just kind of channels through you. But yeah, it doesn't really come from your analytical mind, I've discovered.
Correct. I always think of that like iceberg picture where like just the peak, the top, we think, oh, that's where our creativity comes from. But like, actually it comes from the 90% that's underneath the surface.
It's so true. And for me, I just find that if I just kind of trust the process and trust that it's going to be there when I need it to be there.
Mm.
I used to really kind of try to plan out photo shoots before I'd get there. And, down to the T. I'm a planner. So I kind of would really plan out everything and all my different ideas and shots that I wanted to get. And 98% of the time I would get there and not even look at what I had written down, not even follow that plan at all, because it just kind of flows from you and you create something that's really cool. And if I just trust that and just know that that's going to occur and just kind of trust that natural flow of creativity and not get all in my head, then then things go really smoothly. So it's,
do you have any like little tricks or tips when you do get caught in your head to kind of come back into that trust the flow of the process?
No, maybe a little. No, I mean, so one thing, for me, like, I get off the internet. For one, I don't know if anybody else finds that the internet really influences their creativity. It can be great. It can be a great source of inspiration, but I find that when I get in those kind of loops where I'm, kind of low key panicking about a job or something that I'm going to do or a project I'm working on, if I am on the internet kind of looking at things for inspiration, I start to, it overloads my mind and I start to really, play the comparison game and think about, and then I see all these photos that are inspiring. And then I think, but I don't want to copy these. So how can I kind of draw inspiration with it? And then all of a sudden I'm just really in a space that I don't need to be in creatively. So I avoid the internet for sure. Okay. Sometimes testing going to the space. So this isn't going to work for people who are maybe painters or anything like that. But for me, if I'm shooting in a space, I'll go check it out. And that will help me see it, like from my photographer vision, through my photographer vision eyes, shots that I want to get, or how that light looks really cool over there. And then I start to calm down a little bit because I have some ideas and I have some inspiration that came from my genuine place of creativity. And so that's another thing too. Or, even I guess if you're into meditation or even just shutting down all of your distractions and letting your mind wander and kind of tapping into that creative flow place can give you a little reminder that it's there and that you can just trust that and not get all in your head.
Yeah. So great. I love all of these reminders. They're so important and helpful because we do get caught in our head in that comparison game of constantly seeking things outside of ourselves for inspiration, when I believe we have a lot of inspiration inside of us if we trust it or listen to it and kind of give ourselves space to experience it.
Exactly. Completely.
I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. What's your earliest memory of being creative?
It's so funny because I used to not really think I was a creative person. And I went on this whole like existential crisis last summer about my creativity and kind of was forced to confront this kind of child of, my inner child and what I was like back then. And this idea that I had that I wasn't creative, because when I thought back on my earlier days, I was so creative all the time, creative. And I would write poetry and draw and, just do crafts all the time and loved doing that kind of thing. But for some reason I had in my head that none of these things were really counted or something. But I remember I drew a lot. Like I was really into horses. I was really fortunate to be able to start riding lessons when I was 5, and I rode my whole life. And it was really like my world was horses and all that. So even being really young and being completely obsessed, I really wanted to draw horses. And drawing is not a natural gift of mine, which again, in my mind reinforced that I wasn't creative, probably because how you have this friend who just is really good at everything that she does.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I had that friend when I was a child, and I'm just like, you're just brilliant at everything. And so I started the comparison game really early, as we all do.
Right.
And thinking and looking at her and thinking, well, her drawings come so easily, but I just can't make it happen. But I practiced really
Mm.
a lot. Like I tried and I practiced, and I had notebooks full of trying to draw horses. And I, would take books out of the library because that's all we had back then, and would do the sketches like, here's a circle and here's a circle. And then all of a sudden it's a horse.
Yeah.
And I learned. And I mean, can I draw the best horse? No, of course not. But I can draw something that people will look at and say, wow, that's a pretty good horse. So there's a couple of things that have inspired my adult idea of creativity through that. The first is that prior to my kind of rediscovering my creativity last year, I think I had this belief that all creative people are just talented. And that's really doing a disservice, not only to myself, but also to the people who work really hard
Yeah.
to hone their craft and
Mhm.
who maybe they are really naturally talented and maybe they're not, but that doesn't really give them enough credit for how much time and work they put into
Mhm.
doing what they do. So we look at them now and think, well, you're really talented, but we have no idea how much hard work has gone on to getting to that point.
Mhm.
So I often felt like if it didn't just come naturally and instant to me, then I wasn't creative and that wasn't for me.
Mhm.
So that whole lesson of, when I think back on the little girl who really just wanted to draw a horse, I realize how much that is like a lot of different creative arts, and how if you're not necessarily just naturally gifted at something, but you really love it and you want that, then just keep going and figuring it out, because
Mhm.
a lot of people maybe aren't naturally talented at the thing that they're really good at now, but they worked really hard to get there, and you can too.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, so many things that as children, and then you stick with it or you don't stick with it. And as adults, you wish you stuck with it, you didn't, and think, oh, I can't pick it up now, but you can. And that idea that creativity is like a special gene that only certain people have, such a myth. And yet,
Mhm.
I think, as you were saying, an existential creativity crisis, trying to figure it out. It makes a lot of sense. And recognizing those pieces that are still alive in yourself, whether you now, if you think about drawing horses, it reminds you of being a kid. When was the last time you drew a horse?
It's, you know, I'm pretty sure I've probably drawn. What the heck was that? I've probably drawn a horse in the last few years, but it would have just been kind of really quickly, either in like Pictionary or, to show my
Yeah.
kid a picture of a horse or something like that. But it's funny because even though it's been a long time since I've really sat down and just drawn horses a lot,
Mhm.
it comes right out of me. Like I can
Mm.
draw it the exact same way I did then because I practiced so hard. It's like
Yes.
completely burnt into my brain how to draw a horse. And so it's one of those skills that kind of never really left me, I guess.
Uh-huh.
But, when you were saying about how there's a lot of things that we did when we were kids and we either gave it up or whatever, I really feel that because I played piano when I was a kid, and I played the flute and I played the clarinet a little bit. And, I had a few different musical instruments that I played that I didn't keep playing. I mean, I'm sure I could still pick it up, the piano fairly
Mhm.
easily, but music is something that I just recently started to get back into because it's something
Mhm.
that I really loved when I was a kid. And I don't have a ton of time for it even still, but I bought, like a tin whistle and like an ocarina and just like a couple of little like cheap wind instruments, but
Yeah.
that sound really fun. And it's just a way to bring back a little bit of that creativity and music and stuff from my childhood
Mhm.
that is a huge part of creative self-care for me right now.
Mm. I love, yeah, creative self-care. I think when many people talk about creativity, they're talking about the final finished product of it, not a lot about the process or what people who have creative careers do for their own personal creativity and keeping their creative cup full so they can continue to produce
Yeah.
external creative products. So I love that music and a tin whistle. And I actually found my tin whistle the other day when I was cleaning. So I love it.
Amazing.
Yeah. Picking that back up too.
There
Or
you go.
yeah, just different, you know, different things that I think about as a kid that I used to do also, that I'm like, oh yeah, like gardening or planting
Mhm.
things, or that whole process, I think is a creative experience. And yeah.
Agreed. I'm a big gardener, and that was the creativity plays into it in the way you lay out your garden and plan it
Mhm.
all out. And speaking of what, thinking as children, I mean, is that what the whole adult coloring book craze has been all about? Is people being like, well, this was really fun. Why can't I still have fun like this? I'm doing the coloring,
Right.
and how therapeutic it is. And that's not a coincidence. We feel all those things, that kind of nostalgia. And I remember
Mhm.
buying when they first kind of became a thing, buying an adult coloring book and some, fancy markers and colored pencils and things. And just, I can't even describe the feeling of buying those and feeling like I had something that I could do that was creative, like just kind of sitting around in the evenings and then a kind of a little
Mhm.
outlet. Oh, it was so good. And I hope everyone had that kind of rediscovery of their creativity when that happened.
Yeah. I think it's such a gift to give yourself those pieces. For me,
Mhm.
crocheting is that I will sit and crochet and make random things, like a witch hat for my cat. But
Oh my
um,
gosh. Tell me more about the witch hat for your cat. Does it come in Boston Terrier size? Because
it might, it could. Yes. Has little ear flaps. It's
oh
very
my
cute.
gosh, that is so
Um,
cute.
but yeah, like allowing my creative imagination to kind of just get inspired and through this form of crafting, or that I really only do for myself, like coloring in a coloring book. It's not, you're not going to display it for other people to see. It's that process. And we forget, I think, that we need that process as adults.
Mhm.
And I'm really curious what your thoughts are on, how as adults we think, oh, I can't do that. Coloring is for kids. Do you feel like you went through that, or were you just like, no, I'm getting a coloring book. I know this is going to be great.
I I knew right away that it was going to be great, but I know what you mean, because for me, I really like to play video games. So I remember going through a period of time as a kind of young adult thinking that those days were just over because I was an adult now,
Yeah.
not realizing that, like, that's kind of the idea of being an adult. You can do whatever you want. So if you want to still play video
Right.
games, then play video games. And it's the same with coloring, I think.
Mhm.
But I absolutely think that there's people who just feel like that would be silly, or why bother. And same with any kind of creative art. They might just feel like, well, I don't have time for that, or I'm too tired at the end of the day. And I feel that too at the end of the day. I also feel really tired, but I am also crocheting miniature pumpkins. I am.
Oh,
Uh,
fun.
I know they're very
Love
cute.
that.
But so even if I just pull it out at the end of the day, just a little bit while I'm like chilling and watching some Netflix or
Mhm.
binging some sort of show, that act of also being creative at the same time is multi-purpose. Really, it
Mhm.
helps me calm down, it helps me relax after the day, it helps me recharge my creative batteries, because I like what you said about kind of using other creative means to fuel your kind of central creativity, because I really believe in that a lot too. So
Mhm.
creativity really feels like a river, and for me it certainly did, especially last summer when I went through my whole deal where I felt like I wasn't creative, because I think that my creative river had really kind of just frozen solid. And
Yeah.
it was those little acts that started to get it moving again, like learn, just doodling on Procreate on my iPad at night, or
Mhm.
crocheting something, or coloring in the coloring book. And those tiny little, even if it was just for 20 minutes, those little pieces start to thaw that river of creativity, and all of a sudden things are starting to flow a little bit more, and it starts to snowball. It's like a muscle. Once you start using it, it becomes a lot more effective.
Yeah.
And yeah, that has been really amazing.
Nice. Can I ask how do you think your river became frozen? Like,
Yeah, well, it was completely because of the inner self-talk that I wasn't a creative person, which,
mm,
like so many people, and I've talked to so many people about this. I was really public about my struggle on Instagram last summer,
mhm,
because I knew my community on there is the creative community, and I knew that they would relate somewhat. Someone would
mhm,
relate to what I was going through. So I really wanted to share it out there. And I heard from so many people who they also had the same story, that they weren't creative people. And which blew my mind because some of the people who said that, I could have never imagined them not being creative. I mean, they're so talented and just amazing. Like their skills are, I can't imagine people saying that. So, I think that I had just refute and really shut it down because there's also a real, of course, vulnerability that comes with being creative. So if you've ever, and then if you've ever kind of felt like you're not creative or had any kind of feedback from anyone that made you feel like what you did wasn't great, or even if that is just your inner voice, because I know as a photographer, I was often comparing myself to other photographers and saying, well, your vision isn't as good as theirs. And yeah, you took this great shot, but what about that one you missed that you should have got? And, there's all these things that I would think and say, and things like when you're a professional creative, especially a professional photographer, you're always getting undercut by other photographers, or there's people who don't want to pay your prices because they say it's too expensive. And then they go to someone who charges like $50 and it's heartbreaking. It really breaks your heart. And that kind of thing will lead you to question your talent, your ability. And when you are putting your creativity out there and you get any kind of feedback, even if it's not real and you just interpret it as a kind of a hit to what you're putting out there and people aren't loving it, it can really damage your idea of your creativity. So I had just felt too much pain, I think, from it, and too much, starting right from being a kid and like being teased for singing, or like, being made fun of for that poem that you wrote or whatever, those kinds of things are things that you carry with you for so long. They're like etched on your soul and you believe them. And until you become an adult and you have a moment like I had last summer. And what happened was I was getting to a point where I wasn't doing anything creative. I wasn't taking any photos. I wasn't doing anything creative. And I remember having a moment where I was listening to this audiobook, and something in the beginning of the audiobook was just talking about creativity. Like someone had sent somebody an artwork that was beautiful and they were amazing. And I just like burst into tears. And I didn't understand where this was coming from, this feeling. And I didn't even really know what it was, but it was just this really strong emotion and thinking, I want to be that. Like, I want creativity. Not that I wanted acknowledgement as a creative, but I had it in me and I needed to get it out. Like it just was trapped in me and it was coming out through my eyes as water. Like it was just really, and I had just stifled it so much for so long. And I don't think that you can do that really. And I was really just not letting that out. And for me, I guess I'm a lot more creative than I thought I was. I can't live like that. Like I needed to really find a place for that creativity to go. And so I really, I worked on it. It was a lot of kind of inner work and confronting some memories that didn't feel real great and kind of reframing them as an adult, looking back and understanding from an outside perspective. And then just practicing it, going through the steps. And it was hard. It was really hard. I mean, with photography being kind of my central creative outlet, I did a few photo shoots thinking that, it would happen if I just went out with my camera and I, did a photo shoot and I had this great idea for what I wanted to photograph. It would just really flow, but it didn't. It was really slow and painful and awful. And it felt really bad. And I felt like all of the things I told myself about being crap was like coming true. Cause I just felt like it was all crap. But it was just this. And then it slowly started to get better. And again, like I said in the beginning, a lot of that was the pressure that I was putting on myself and the being inside my head. And, eventually it started when I stopped putting so much pressure, and instead of kind of going out on these extravagant photo shoots, I just threw my travel camera like in my bag when I went to the beach with my family and started to take shots of, them playing in the water. And then, there's a cool texture on this, on the wharf over there. And then, then all of a sudden without the pressure and the my getting all in my head about everything, it just kind of started piece by piece to come back.
Nice. I mean, creativity, I think, is a journey that ebbs and flows and comes and goes. And and I really appreciate, thanks for sharing your journey of challenge and struggle and coming out of it and being where you are today with new business ventures. And that's really exciting too. And Yeah, it takes a lot of vulnerability and a lot of courage. And I think it's Henri Matisse who says creativity takes courage, or well, that quote is attributed to him. Whether he said it or not, I don't know.
Right.
But it does take a lot of courage to look inside at ourselves and say, yeah, I am running myself around. And how do I change that? Or how do I reframe things in a way that my subconscious will accept? It's not just taking a negative and making it a positive, because we won't believe that. But what is that reframe around, my creative time is important versus like, I'm the most creative human alive,
There's a balance.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. But in valuing it, finding the value in it and recognizing and holding like the space for it is something that people say a lot, holding space and just giving it the time and attention it deserves and making room for it in your life, really. And it's hard when you're an adult and you have a million things, we're supposed to eat right and exercise. And if you have kids, you got to, make sure that they're nurtured, and you have work to do, and you have your relationships you have to keep up. And it's a lot. And creativity can often get really bumped far down that list of priorities. But I think that when, especially if you are a creative professional, you need to be able to tap into it for work reasons. You need to really give it the respect and time that it deserves. I often think of creativity as a separate entity for me, kind of altogether, and a relationship in and of itself, my relationship with my creativity, and really making sure that is a priority. I mean, it has to be for my mental wellness. It has to be for my work. It has to be for my feelings of self-worth. It has to be. It just has to be higher up on that list than it certainly was for many years. And I think a lot of people probably end up bumping that pretty far down the list too.
Yeah, that resonates so strongly with me, that it is a relationship you have to cultivate like anything else. And how can you incorporate it into that everyday experience, into your relationships with your children, into your relationship with bosses or colleagues, into how you get dressed, how you cook, how you clean. I was having a creative cleaning episode the other day.
Oh, I'm going to have to listen to that.
Made it more fun. Like I post something on Instagram, how that quote from Mary Poppins with, in every job that must be done, there is an element of fun. And to look at cleaning the house through that lens and quote made things a little more enjoyable.
That's amazing. That is creativity in your everyday life. And I love it. I'm not great at prioritizing cleaning. My level is sanitation. Like, as long as everyone's going to be healthy,
right.
Well, and then everyone's, that I say that, but also my mind goes crazy if there's too much clutter around. So that also has to be taken care of. But, I've never really thought of it through that lens, but now I'm kind of excited to figure out how I can be more creative with my cleaning.
Yeah. I don't know. I love mopping. There's something about a mop that is like, I don't know. I can get creative storytelling happening while I'm mopping something.
It's amazing.
It is.
Yeah.
Those everyday things. So
I love that.
Well, how would you encourage others to find creativity in their lives? I know we've talked about a lot of different creative expressions, but for someone who doesn't feel creative, how would you encourage them?
I think the first thing is to look at how much creativity you actually do put into every day and deciding what your definition of creativity is as well. I mean, I think a lot of people, and I can resonate with this as well, used to feel like creativity is like a certain thing. I'm stumbling over my words, but basically creativity in my mind was painting, writing, drawing, like a very specific set of things. Like, you produce something and then it's out in the world, and that's creative. Yeah. But when you start to look at it in the wider scope of, anything that you do, whether you're cleaning or if you are reorganizing your garage, or do you remember that feeling when you were a kid and you'd rearrange your bedroom?
Oh yeah.
Best day ever. Like, it's like a whole new room. I know. And that is creative. And just so many things. Parenting and every day is creative because you're trying to basically figure it out as you go. So that's constantly being creative. And I mean, it's just everything from cooking and baking and all the things that you have to do every day, dress yourself or, decorate your home, whatever. Like, it's just even your drive to and from work. If you're a commuter, can be creative. You can either decide to take the boring highway or you can like take the cool back road. Like everything, you can find creativity in everything. As a photographer, I mean, and this is something I used to do a lot when I was in my kind of mundane tasks, is I would just look at a scene and think about it in how I would capture it in a photograph. So, whether you're a painter or a writer or you're a musician or whatever, if you're just sitting around in your day to day and you have the ability to kind of let your mind drift, think about what song you would match with this situation, or what photograph you'd capture, or how you would capture that light in a painting, or how you would draw the shadows from that tree or whatever. And then that way you are bringing creativity in your life without actually doing it, but it can also really make those moments that feel mundane more creative. And then that's just kind of the easiest way to start bringing it in.
Yeah, that's so great to something you're already doing, change a thought or incorporate another way of looking at a scene or a canvas or a piece of music. Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing that I really like to do too is, being on the go all the time, and we always have our phones on us. I have kind of a running list on my notes on my iPhone. Whenever I get an inspirational idea, whether it's something I want to write about or something I want to post about on Instagram, or a photograph series that I want to do or something like that, I just have kind of a running list of ideas so that if you are just out grocery shopping and something pops into your head, you can just really quickly like jot that down before it's gone forever. And then when you do have the time to sit down and do something that's a little bit more creative, you can kind of rifle through those ideas and you're not kind of sitting there being like, what am I going to do now? Because you have your list that you've been working on.
Yeah. That's so good. I love the list piece. I don't use it. I think about using it, but I don't. So a good reminder to use the notes, use the list. Yeah.
It's mine's still a mess. It's just like, it's depiction of my brain. It's just full and there's just all kinds of different ideas everywhere. It's kind of a mess. But
that's creativity in note form though, right?
It is. And you know what? If there was something more visual and fun, I would use that instead.
Yeah. I love it. Well, this has been such a treat. I just have one final question for you. What does it feel like in your body to be creative?
That is an amazing question because I'm not sure I have the words for it, but I know what you're talking about because I know that feeling. And that's kind of the feeling I was talking about with the coloring books. Like when I first picked those up, because I was a working photographer at the time, but I wasn't exercising kind of any other deliberate creativity, to distinguish from the everyday creativity we're talking about. Right. So when I picked those up, it's exciting, I think, is really the feeling that you get in your body. It's kind of the same feeling you get when you start to date somebody or you have met a really cool new friend that you're excited about hanging out with again, or you're really excited for this vacation you're going to take, or you can't wait to go on that hike this weekend, or you're really excited to like eat that piece of chocolate cake after the kids go to bed. That's parenthood life for me right now. But yeah, that's really that feeling of anticipation and excitement and possibility and hope, I think for me is about what is coming. It's really, really, it is a really strong feeling of bubbling up inside you. And it's just going to kind of come out in some cool, creative way.
That's amazing. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing all of this and for chatting about creativity. And if people want to learn more about what you do, your courses, your classes, your new platform, how would they go about doing that?
Well, really, the best place to connect with me is probably on Instagram. That's where I hang out most of the time. I'm not super active on other platforms. I have a wonderful social media assistant who makes it so I don't ever have to go on Facebook. So don't come find me there. But I am on Instagram at amy.takes.pictures. And feel free to like DM me and say, hey, I really, really love connecting with the community on Instagram. It's so much fun. We have a great time over there. So please do come follow me me. It's great. My website is amytakespictures.com, and all of my courses are there. I have some fun free things that you can check out too, like PDFs and quizzes and a lot of YouTube videos that you can find all that through my website. And I'll be filling in all of the information on our new upcoming platform on my Instagram. So as long as you're tuned in there, you'll get all of the details.
Perfect. Well, I will add that to the show notes so people can easily find you on Instagram and your website. And thank you again. This has been so wonderful to chat with you.
Thanks so much for having me. This was really fun.
Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your reviews, comments, and questions. Check out our website, sustainingcreativity.com, for upcoming offerings and creativity coaching. Tune in Tuesdays for our next episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.